The reason she's running with this is the idea, oh, the White House went, and they just, the military, it's so suspicious that they would just aggressively amplify this video of Erica Kirk to get lots of engagement. Does aggressively amplifying videos of Erica
even if it was
to get us maximum engagement describe anyone over the past 8 months? Yeah. Does it? I wonder.
Yeah, I wonder who that could be. It's
final 10 seconds, Graham.
Go check. Iran have a nuclear weapon.
Comes as President Trump condemns media coverage of the Iran operation, saying the media has lost its way. Quote, if Iran surrenders, admits their navy is gone and resting at the bottom of the sea, and admit their defeat to the great power and force of the magnificent USA, the failing New York Times, the China Street Journal, Wall Street Journal, corrupt and now irrelevant CNN, and all other members of the fake news media will headline that Iran had a masterful and brilliant victory over the United States of America. It wasn't even close. And throughout negotiations, President Trump repeatedly saying talks with the regime are complicated by their fragmented leadership, which broke into different factions in the wake of Operation Epic Fury's initial strikes.
Well, their leaders are gone. Their leaders are gone at the first level. The second level, we're dealing with half of the third level.
This coming as the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports still holds strong. Central Command reporting the U.S. has now redirected 85 commercial vessels, with key oil exports and imports slowing sharply. And to add more economic pressure to Tehran, the U.S. Treasury extending a 30-day waiver to allow countries that are energy vulnerable to purchase sanctioned Russian oil that's now stranded at sea. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent writing that the exemption, quote, will also help reroute existing supply to countries most in need by reducing China's ability to stockpile discounted oil. The Chinese regime has been stockpiling a large amount of cheap sanctioned crude by buying about 90% from Iran at a highly discounted price and buying oil from Russia and Venezuela through shadow fleets that avoid Western sanctions. Meanwhile, Secretary Bessent calling on G7 nations to ramp up economic pressure against Iran.
We'll also be discussing sanctions and terror finance, and we call upon all our G7 and indeed all of our allies and the rest of the world to follow the sanctions regime so that we can cut down on the illicit finance that is fueling the Iranian war machine and get this money back to the Iranian people.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, meanwhile, is continuing to directly call out the CCP over its financial support for the Iranian regime, which he calls the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. And this, of course, is coming amid reports that the Iranian regime is still receiving weapons support from the CCP. And to add to that backdrop, it's as Russia's President Vladimir Putin is currently preparing to visit Xi Jinping in Beijing just 4 days after President Trump left Beijing there. Steve, back to you.
Mari Otsu live from the White House. Thank you, Mari. The Trump administration today announcing new sanctions targeting some of Cuba's top officials, along with its intelligence agency. This comes as the U.S. is imposing an oil blockade on the communist nation, triggering blackouts and fuel shortages. The sanction is targeting 11 individuals tied with the Cuban regime in 3 government organizations. That includes military officials associated with the regime's security apparatus. In a statement, the State Department says, quote, for more than 60 years, the Cuban regime has prioritized its communist ideology and personal wealth over the well-being of its own citizens, while allowing for the exploitation of Cuba for foreign intelligence, military, and terror operations. And the Department of Justice is creating a $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund to compensate targets of political weaponization. This is in exchange for the president dropping his $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS over a leak of his tax documents. Formal apologies and monetary awards could soon be heading to January 6 defendants, pro-life advocates who were prosecuted for protesting at abortion clinics, and parents who were labeled as domestic terrorists after speaking against gender and racial ideology at school board meetings. President Trump, his sons, and the Trump Organization will not receive monetary damages. Joining us now to assess, our panelist, Madeline Somerville, is national trial attorney and former Democratic speechwriter, and Michelle Backus, spokesperson for Citizens Alliance. It's great to have you both. Madeline, let's start with you. This fund will compensate individuals who were targeted by the Biden administration. Does this suggest that there is evidence that the Biden DOJ was weaponized against Trump supporters?
No, not at all.
I think that as an attorney, when I looked at the dismissal, first of all, it was with prejudice, so there's no coming back on it. And also, it was written such that a judge is not allowed to have any oversight of it whatsoever. Ultimately, it wasn't a good look for Trump, right? Because he was taking a tremendous amount of money from the taxpayers in his tax lawsuit. And now this slush fund that he's created is essentially going to compensate likely not the mom and pops who might have been targeted one way or the other, which I don't think they were. It's going to be his big rich friends. It gives us the same thing that they've done in China and the same thing they've done in Russia. This is how they compensate their rich friends and how they allow people to take sides. They show this is the side that you're on. And we're going to compensate you for the harms that you've suffered as a result of Biden telling that was an ill issue.
But Madeline, I would just follow up. I mean, you mentioned rich friends. This is really geared not to the president and his family or his friends, but to some of those grassroots January 6th folks that had the book thrown at them, as well as, parents and pro-life supporters that, didn't receive due process.
Yeah, I don't think that that's what's going to happen here. First of all, the cases that existed with the January 6th defendants and with the pro-life prosecutions, I've looked into the pro-life prosecutions as well, and they've been painted incorrectly by the media. What actually happened in a lot of those cases was there was behavior that was endangering people around them. It wasn't little grandmas. It was terrorism, and that's why it was prosecuted in the way that it was supposed to. It's just been painted like it was little old ladies who were going to jail, right? And I highly doubt that any judge who prosecuted who held someone responsible for January 6th is going to go back on their ruling, right? Or if they had a trial, a jury of these people's peers already decided that they were guilty. It's taking the justice system and throwing it out the window, and taking Congress's ability to deal with money and throwing that out the window too. But then President Trump can just say, you know what, I am your retribution, just like I told you at the very beginning, and I am getting retribution for you, and this is how I'm going to do it.
So, Michelle, some of these parents, that Madeline is referencing, were labeled as domestic terrorists. They were outraged when their daughters were being raped and assaulted in the women's room by men who were
it never happened.
Transgender.
Bullshit.
It did happen. That's where that famous video in Virginia.
She's going to deny because she's a Democrat.
Trump's private tax returns was illegal in the first place, but there's no way to guarantee. I think when you reference that this is going to go to his buddies, there's no way that you could know that or guarantee that. This was intended for the many people that were politically persecuted under the Biden administration. The Biden administration was notorious for their lawfare. We look at the cases under President Trump when he was running and all of the lawfare that was happening there. And I will tell you, I interviewed quite a lot of parents when I was hosting a show that were weaponized, that were being attacked by the system. And I truly am happy that this is happening. I hope that some of these people that were unfairly treated are rewarded for it. But I don't think it's fair to say that it's going to go to his buddies. There's no way that you could ever guarantee that. And there were a lot of people that were affected by Biden's lawfare during his time in power.
Michelle, I would like to follow up with you. The $1.8 billion fund to compensate the victims of the weaponization is one thing, but are you confident that there will be safeguards in place to make sure that, regardless of political party, that these things won't happen in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading through that as well, and I know that they're putting people in place to help allocate these funds. Obviously, anyone's able to apply, no matter your political party affiliation, if you believe that you were politically persecuted. But look, if anything else, I hope this sets a precedent. No one on the left or right should be politically persecuted. You should not be attacked based off of your beliefs. And, you look at, for instance, look at the truckers, right? Back during when we were looking at elections, who were being debanked. I mean, that was a massive issue. You're seeing, I think we're trying to balance out the pendulum, I would say, of what was happening over the past few years, where it was particularly conservatives were being punished for their beliefs or being outspoken about things that they believed in.
If I could just respond to that.
Sure.
Thank you. I think that your perspective is one that a lot of people have in terms of balancing out the pendulum, right? I think that people are okay with Trump using different mechanisms that go against tradition in order to balance out that pendulum. But the problem is what he's doing has no oversight. It's being overseen by his own DOJ
No
and to
oversight
benefit his own political
on
leanings,
Joe Biden.
right? So there's
No
nobody to balance
oversight
it out,
on
and it's
Congress.
also violating the
No
rights of the
oversight
courts and
on
the
the
rights of Congress.
DOJ.
So I think it's up to people who support President Trump to say, how far am I willing to go? How many of the principles that I believe in terms of checks and balances am I willing to take and throw out the window in order to have that pendulum swing back, even though I don't believe that the pendulum has swung the wrong way.
You guys
I think
cheated
that is
in
how
the
people see it.
2020.
And I think they need to be reminded that it's you are being asked to overlook the things that you believe in as an American who believes in the Constitution in order to swing that back, and are you okay with that?
Michelle, I mean, this is a president that had, this is a president that had four cases thrown against him, multiple assassination attempts. Some are saying that what he's done so far in this respect has been pretty light.
Extremely light, in my opinion. You look at the weaponization, that's never happened to any president in United States history. You want to talk about the Trump administration, the Trump DOJ, well, let's look at the Biden era. That was the Biden DOJ, right? This isn't the same thing. I agree with you in saying that this is somewhat light compared to what Trump could be doing in this situation. And look, maybe this will even the field, so this won't be an abuse of power like we saw during the Biden admin. Moving forward. And I truly hope that is the place, because no one should be attacked or persecuted for their political beliefs, no matter which side that is. But to say that no one's going to be held accountable, I mean, regardless, you look at the Biden DOJ, who was held accountable at the Biden DOJ? That was extremely corrupt. I truly believe that we can. You did, though. You mentioned that the Trump DOJ is no one's going to hold them accountable.
Well, I see. You're saying what I'm saying is for oversight. Yes, sorry.
Let's. I want to get both of your thoughts on elections. The midterms coming up, some pretty big ones over the weekend. Saturday in Louisiana, you had Senator Bill Cassidy losing his Louisiana Senate primary, making him the first elected senator to lose renomination since 2012. It now goes to a runoff between the Trump-endorsed Representative Julia Letlow and also a very conservative-aligned state treasurer named John Fleming. Here's Representative Letlow and Senator Lindsey Graham.
Again, that's another testament to the president's endorsement, how powerful it is in Louisiana, that we were still able to garner 45% of the vote despite.
So, Madeline, the Congresswoman made an interesting point. Does this demonstrate that a Trump endorsement still carries a lot of weight among voters? And what do you expect in tomorrow night's Kentucky primary with Thomas Massie on the ballot?
Yeah, I think it does. And from a completely nonpartisan perspective, I mean, you look at this and you see that that's the candidate that he's endorsed, and that's who's driven behind him. But I think it's important to remember also that this is a primary, and that when you are polling and when you are taking account of the people who how strongly they feel right now, you're only getting the sentiment of the people who feel the strongest. And so the people who feel the strongest on the road be forget about President Trump's endorsement, right? The rest of the folks who are unhappy with what the president has done so far, who may have just voted for him in this past election but never did before, they're not going to be the ones who went and got a Republican ballot in the primaries to vote, right? So it's difficult to tell what's actually going to happen because you're only hearing the squeaky wheels, if that makes sense.
Michelle, obviously Senator Cassidy voted to impeach the president after the 2020 election. I think a lot of Democrats were, kind of hoping that this would be the last of President Trump after he wins this race, but clearly he still has a lot of power in political sway. What does this tell you about 2028 in terms of who the next Republican nominee might be?
J.D. Vance.
That's the big question, isn't it? I was just in DC this past weekend and everyone's going back and forth on who it could be. Obviously, people think JD Vance, but Marco Rubio also is polling well. I truly hope that whoever they pick, the Republican Party can get behind them, because if you look at what's happening on Twitter right now, you look at what happened in Louisiana, we're looking at Kentucky tomorrow as well. There's a lot of infighting in the party, and that is the last thing that we need to be doing ahead of midterms and also ahead of 2028.
Madeline Somerville, Michelle Backus, really appreciate both of you. Thank you. And right now, you're looking at a